The day I signed the papers for the house was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. After years of toil, our work shifts, skipped vacations, and carefully saving every extra dollar, I had finally bought a home for my daughter, Lily, and me. It wasn't some giant mansion, but to us, it felt like a palace. It was a beautiful two-story house on a quiet tree-lined street with white shutters, a wraparound porch, and a backyard large enough for Lily to run around and chase butterflies. For 7 years, my little girl had lived in cramped apartments with thin walls and noisy neighbors. She had never complained, even when we shared a tiny bedroom because I couldn't afford anything bigger. She would always smile and tell me, "It's okay, Mommy, as long as we're together." That was why this house meant everything to me. The very first room we decorated was Lily's. She was obsessed with princesses and fairy tales, so we painted her walls a soft lavender. Together, we hung tiny glowing star lights across the ceiling, making it look like her own private night sky. I bought her a white canopy bed with flowing curtains that made her squeal with excitement. "This is my castle," she had shouted, spinning in circles. I laughed, watching her joy fill the room. In that moment, every sacrifice I had made felt worth it. For a few months, life was perfect. Then my family called. My parents had always been careless with money. My father had gone through 3 failed business ventures, and my mother had a habit of spending money faster than anyone could earn it. My younger brother, Ryan, had never managed to hold down a steady job. When my mother called, her voice trembled dramatically. "Emma, sweetheart, we're in trouble. We need somewhere to stay temporarily." Apparently, their landlord had sold their rental home. Ryan had just lost his latest job, and they had nowhere else to go. "Just for a few weeks," my mother promised. "Until we get back on our feet." Against the voice in my head warning me not to do it, I said yes. Family helps family, I told myself. At first, everything seemed fine. My parents moved into the downstairs guest room, and Ryan took the upstairs spare room. They acted grateful, helping with chores and thanking me constantly. But after a few weeks, their behavior began to change. My mother criticized everything, from how I cooked dinner to how I raised Lily. "She's too spoiled," she'd mutter whenever Lily asked for dessert. Ryan treated the house like a hotel, leaving dirty dishes everywhere and blasting music late into the night. Then came my Aunt Diane's call. She begged me to let her daughter Sophia stay with us just for a little while, because she needed help managing her work schedule. I hesitated. Sophia was 13 and notoriously spoiled, but my mother insisted. "It's only temporary." Reluctantly, I agreed. That was my biggest mistake. A week later, I had to leave town for a 3-day work conference. The night before leaving, I tucked Lily into her lavender bed. "Will you miss me?" I asked. She nodded sleepily. "Promise you'll come back fast." I kissed her forehead. Always, when we returned 3 days later, Lily raced upstairs ahead of me, eager to see her room. Then I heard it, a scream so sharp and heartbroken that my blood ran cold. "Mommy." I dropped my suitcase and ran upstairs. What I saw stopped me dead. Lily's room was gone. The lavender walls had been painted over in plain beige. Her starlights were ripped down. Her butterfly decals had vanished. The white canopy bed was gone. In its place was sleek modern furniture, expensive makeup scattered across a new vanity. Sophia sat on the bed, scrolling through her phone like she belonged there. My mother appeared behind me, arms crossed. "Oh good, you're home," she said casually. "We moved Sophia in while you were gone." I stared at her, unable to process her words. "What?" She needed more space. My mother said with a shrug. Lily stood frozen beside me, clutching her stuffed bunny. "Mommy, where's my room?" And in that moment, staring at my daughter's tear-filled eyes, I realized something terrifying. My family hadn't just crossed a line. They had declared war. For several long seconds, I just stood there staring at what used to be Lily's room. It felt unreal, like I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. The soft lavender walls Lily had chosen herself were now painted a dull beige. The glowing stars we had carefully hung together were gone, leaving tiny holes scattered across the ceiling. Her little bookshelf, once filled with fairy tales and coloring books, had been shoved into the hallway like garbage. And sitting in the middle of it all was Sophia, completely unbothered. She glanced up from her phone, rolled her eyes, and muttered, "What? It's just a room." That was when Lily's small hand gripped mine tightly. Her fingers trembled. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why did they take my castle?" The pain in her voice hit me like a knife. I knelt beside her and wrapped my arms around her shaking little body. "It's okay," I whispered, even though it wasn't. "I'll fix this." Then I stood up and turned to face my mother. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" She sighed dramatically, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Emma, don't make this into a big scene. Sophia is older. She needs privacy and space for schoolwork. This is Lily's room," I said through clenched teeth. My father appeared behind her, his expression cold and dismissive. "She's only 7, he said. "She doesn't need all that space." I stared at him in disbelief. "She's my daughter." My younger brother Ryan leaned casually against the wall, smirking. "Relax, it's not like she's homeless. The couch downstairs is perfectly fine." I felt heat rise in my chest. "The couch," I repeated. My mother crossed her arms. "Emma, honestly, you've always spoiled Lily too much. This could teach her humility." I could barely breathe. Teach her humility by stealing her room in her own house. Before I could respond, Lily buried her face against my side, quietly sobbing. That was the only thing stopping me from exploding. I took a slow breath and led her downstairs. That night, I made up the couch with blankets and pillows, trying to make it as comfortable as possible. Lily sat silently, clutching Mr. Bunny to her chest. "Did I do something bad?" she finally asked, my heart shattered. "No, sweetheart," I said immediately, kneeling in front of her. "You did absolutely nothing wrong." "Then why did they take my room?" I didn't know how to answer. How do you explain cruelty to a 7-year-old? I kissed her forehead and promised her I would make everything right. But after she fell asleep, I sat alone in the dark living room, anger burning through me. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just thoughtless behavior, it was deliberate. The next morning, I confronted them at breakfast. "You have until tonight to put Lily's room back exactly the way it was." My mother laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, Emma," she said, sipping her coffee, "stop being so dramatic." My father shook his head. "This is a family home now. Decisions should benefit everyone." "A family home," I repeated. "Yes," Ryan said smugly. "You can't just act like some dictator because your name's on a piece of paper." That sentence made me pause. Because suddenly I understood. They didn't see themselves as guests. They saw themselves as owners. And the more I looked around, the more evidence I noticed. New furniture had appeared in the living room. Expensive pieces I hadn't approved. The kitchen had been rearranged. A renovation magazine lay open on the table, with pages marked for remodeling ideas. Then I overheard my mother talking on the phone later that afternoon. "Yes," she said with a laugh. "Emma's practically never home. Once we settle in fully, we'll probably redo the upstairs." My stomach dropped. They weren't planning to leave, they were taking over. That evening, I quietly checked the outdoor security camera footage from the last few weeks. What I saw made my blood boil, delivery after delivery of luxury purchases, Ryan unloading a brand new gaming system, my father carrying golf clubs worth thousands, my mother signing for designer shopping bags. They had lied about being broke. Every word had been a manipulation. As I sat there watching the footage, a cold calm settled over me. If they thought they could steal from my daughter and claim my home as theirs, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. And this time I wasn't going to ask nicely. The moment I finished watching the security footage, my anger turned into something colder. Clarity. For weeks, I had questioned myself. I had wondered if I was overreacting, if maybe stress had made me see the situation worse than it was. But the footage erased every doubt. My family hadn't acted out of desperation. They had planned this. While pretending to be helpless, they had used my kindness as an opportunity to slowly take over my home. Every expensive shopping bag, every luxury delivery, every smug smile suddenly made sense. They had never intended to leave. And they clearly believed I was too soft to stop them. That was their biggest mistake. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at school with a smile and a kiss, careful not to let her see the storm brewing inside me. Then I drove straight to my lawyer's office. Mr. Carter had handled the house purchase months earlier, and when I explained everything, his expression darkened. "They changed your daughter's room without permission?" he asked. I nodded. "And they've been living their rent, free while lying about financial hardship?" He leaned back in his chair and adjusted his glasses. "Since the property is solely in your name, they have no legal claim. We can have formal eviction notices prepared immediately." "Good," I said. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. Over the next 48 hours, I said nothing to my family. I acted calm, polite, even agreeable. When my mother smugly mentioned repainting the upstairs hallway next week, I simply nodded. When Ryan joked about converting my home office into his gaming room, I forced a smile. And when Sophia loudly complained that Lily's old room needed better lighting for selfies, I bit my tongue. Let them think they had one. Meanwhile, my lawyer prepared everything. Formal eviction notices, a locksmith appointment, a moving company on standby. Then fate handed me the perfect opportunity. My mother announced she was hosting a large family dinner that Saturday. At our house, she said proudly while inviting relatives over the phone. Our house. The audacity almost made me laugh. But instead I smiled. That sounds wonderful. Saturday arrived. By 6 o'clock, the house was packed with relatives. My aunts, uncles, cousins, and even distant family members filled the living room. My mother floated around acting like queen of the manor, proudly showing people around. Sophia was giving a tour of her room upstairs. Ryan bragged loudly about future renovation plans. They had no idea what was coming. At exactly 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My mother frowned. Who could that be? I stood and walked calmly to the front door. When I opened it, 3 movers stood outside. Behind them was a locksmith, and beside them stood Mr. Carter holding a folder. The room fell silent. My mother's smile vanished. "What is this?" she demanded. I stepped aside and let them enter. Then I turned to face the crowd. "This," I said clearly, "is the end of your stay." Confused murmurs filled the room. My father rose to his feet. "What are you talking about?" Mr. Carter stepped forward and handed each of them an envelope. "These are formal eviction notices." My mother's face went pale. Ryan snatched the papers and scanned them, his expression shifting from confusion to panic. "You can't do this." I folded my arms. "I can. This house belongs to me." "That's ridiculous," my father snapped. "We're family." I looked him straight in the eye. "Family doesn't steal a 7-year-old's bedroom." Gasps rippled through the room. Several relatives turned toward my mother in shock. Before anyone could speak, I picked up the remote for the television and pressed play. The security footage appeared on screen. Clips of luxury deliveries, designer shopping bags, Ryan unloading expensive electronics. My father carrying new golf clubs, the lies were undeniable. My Aunt Susan covered her mouth. "You told us you were broke," she whispered. My mother's face burned red. The movers headed upstairs. Sophia shrieked as they began removing every item from Lily's room. "No, that's my furniture. No," I said coldly. "It never was." The locksmith moved to the front door. Within minutes, every exterior lock was replaced. My father looked at me, stunned. "Where are we supposed to go?" I gave him the same sympathy they'd shown Lily. "That's not my problem." One by one, under the horrified stares of our relatives, they carried their belongings outside. And as they stood on the curb with their suitcases, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Peace. But the best part was still waiting. Because upstairs, Lily's room was finally about to come home. The moment the last of my family's suitcases disappeared down the driveway, an almost magical silence settled over the house. For weeks the walls had echoed with their constant criticism, their entitled demands, and the careless laughter that had followed every cruel remark they made about Lily. Now, for the first time since I had opened my home to them, the house felt like ours again. I locked the front door and leaned against it, letting out a long breath I didn't realize I had been holding. It was over. The next morning, I kept Lily home from school. When she came downstairs rubbing her sleepy eyes, she looked confused. "Mommy, why aren't we leaving?" I smiled. "Because we have something important to do today." Her face brightened with curiosity. "What?" I held out a paint sample fan deck. "We're rebuilding your castle." For a second, she just stared at me. Then her entire face lit up. Really, really. The squeal she let out filled the house with joy I hadn't heard in days. Within an hour, we were standing in what had once been her room again. The ugly beige paint still covered the walls, and the room felt cold and unfamiliar, but not for long. We spent the entire day transforming it. Lily carefully chose a richer lavender shade this time, one she proudly declared was Princess Purple. Together, we painted while laughing at our accidental splashes and handprints. Next came the decorations. I had secretly ordered new fairy lights, even prettier than the old ones. I bought glowing moon lamps, a larger white canopy bed, and a beautiful bookshelf shaped like a castle tower. Lily helped place butterfly decals along the walls, arranging each one with serious concentration. By sunset, the room was glowing softly, more magical than it had ever been before. When Lily stepped back to look at it, her mouth fell open. "Mommy," she whispered, "it's even better than before." Then she threw her arms around me. "Thank you for fighting for me." Her words nearly brought tears to my eyes. I hugged her tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "You never have to thank me for protecting what's yours." That night, I tucked her into her restored bed beneath the glowing fairy lights. As she held Mr. Bunny close, she smiled sleepily. "My castle came back." "Yes," I whispered, "and no one will ever take it again." For the first time in weeks, she fell asleep peacefully. The aftermath spread through the family faster than I expected. Word of what had happened at the dinner party traveled quickly. Relatives who had witnessed the eviction told everyone the truth. The sympathy my parents had carefully cultivated vanished overnight. No one was willing to ignore what they had done to a 7-year-old child. My Aunt Susan called 2 days later. "I had no idea," she said, her voice full of shame. "Your mother lied to all of us." Others reached out too, apologizing for believing my parents' stories. As for my family, They bounced between cheap motels and the homes of relatives willing to tolerate them for short periods. Ryan was finally forced to get an actual job. My father sold his expensive golf clubs. My mother's designer shopping stopped overnight. Then 3 months later, my phone rang. It was my mother. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice came through trembling. "Emma, we've made mistakes. Mistakes, not betrayals, not cruelty. Mistakes. We want to come home," she said. "Family deserves second chances." I looked upstairs toward Lily's room, where soft laughter drifted down the hallway as she played with her dolls. Then I smiled. "No," I said calmly. Silence. Then my mother's voice sharpened. "You'd abandon your own family." I didn't hesitate. "The day you stole my daughter's room, you abandoned us." And with that, I hung up. I blocked her number. That evening, I stood in Lily's doorway as she spun beneath her glowing fairy lights, laughing as if the darkness of those weeks had never happened. And I realized something. The sweetest revenge wasn't seeing my family humiliated. It wasn't watching them lose everything they tried to steal. It was this: the sound of my daughter's laughter, the peace inside our home, the certainty that I had chosen her over everyone else. Because in the end, justice wasn't about punishment. It was about reclaiming what should have never been taken in the first place.